When pinpointing the exact year that Nintendo's flagship Mario series started to open up, mature, and even reflect on its naive past, 2001 feels like a good place to start. The Mario universe, known colloquially for its cartoon fantasy, plastic-perfect, utopian video game image, would expand in world and theming at the hands of Nintendo's advancements in hardware and inspiration from other popular genres. Going to 16-bit brought the series closer to a Saturday morning cartoon look and offered a world for Mario, wider, more terrestrial-themed levels, interconnected by a genuine world map with secret pathways. The 64-bit landscape promoted a wider avatar moveset and a confounding, illusion-ridden castle, leading to abstract worlds and paintings that he ultimately conquers as his own. It seemed as the main games and spin-offs kept going, the series found a likable and plausible realm to ground its reality in, and that all it really needed to push it to the next level was some emotional semblance from its characters besides obvious joy, and a detour in setting to show that the scope of the kingdom isn't always green grass. And much like being advertised a sparkly free mansion that ends up being way more than you bargained for, the Gamecube launch title, Luigi's Mansion, is when we really got a glimpse of the outskirts and the surprising pathos of the Mario universe. A launch title with classic arcade sensibilities that also branches out to the more contemporary adventure genre, and even taking cues from cross-medium staples like cult comedy horror. Characters now had histories behind them, iconic Mario staples gained new subtext and animated liveliness, giving an almost Disney-like horizon to the whole experience. IGN's reference at the time, I don't blame them. The original, fearless main sprite of Days Gone is now a liability, an old useless guard for this incoming mansion modernity. Happy-go-lucky platforming is out of the question in this drab platformist world. Now you must explore, vacuum, get scared, and find loopholes to your problems. Un-Mariofy yourself by being a Luigi. And that's what we're going to focus on for this retrospective. What does the Mario brand gain and lose from this stark detour? And gameplay-wise, how well does the game hybridize the genres of horror and arcade action? I'll be playing the GameCube version through my modded Wii U's backwards compatible Wii mode and with widescreen hacks, as close to original hardware and modern YouTube video satisfaction as possible. We're getting creepy in this cube. Let's we go, amigo. What impressed me about playing Luigi's Mansion recently are its dense and cluttered spaces, and the level of interactivity present throughout. You can tinker with nearly every object you see, and that tech becomes the main gameplay motivation behind illuminating these mysterious spaces. Every room of the mansion starts you in complete darkness, where you're tasked to shake or vacuum nearby furniture until you resolve whatever life force is occupying within, which can range from toads that are scared for their life that you comfort for safe feature access, or as expected, supernatural ghosts that are ready for a fight. Vacuum them up to let the room breathe. There's a ridiculous attention to detail to all the mansion's goods, everything from large furniture and lamps, to even curtains, books, paintings on the walls, and fans on the ceiling, all elicit a reaction from your inputs, either rumbling with dust or giving off collectibles. Coins don't float arbitrarily, they spill onto the floor, along with other jewels and gold bricks. Even dollar bills flap through the air and react to your vacuum suction appropriately. The game has an in-universe camera mode through a Game Boy horror device that Luigi holds in front of him. You get a first-person view of the room he's in, and the option to activate hidden holes, environmental cues and teleports, read into the souls of special ghosts, or simply give off snide comments about the stuff he sees. Luigi's Mansion is drenched in audio-visual feedback, always privy to give responses to any physical contact you make with the world, no matter how negligible. Ghost combat has a satisfying structure, a random encounter startling Luigi in his tracks, where you proceed to find an opening with his flashlight to catch them off guard, reveal their soul, and perform a vacuum tug-of-war against their crazy movements across the room. A one-on-one surprise element that transitions into environmental crowd control. Part of the challenge is making sure you have the space and pull to capture your foe without running into anything that may hinder your progress. The possibility of surprising and capturing a horde of ghosts in one turn is also an enticing gameplay opportunity that any player would want to attempt. And I think sections like the Van Gore enemy gauntlet are when the combat really shines, tasking you on both opportunistic timing to clean out all your foes at once, and how you compromise with them individually should you miss that moment. But while combat has a nice arcade-like playfulness to it, I'm glad that most of the game's challenge is based on logic, finding loopholes out of your enemy's personality, and generally figuring out what a room needs to feel complete. Portrait ghosts are the special mini-bosses of the game, these defined souls from a past life that have escaped their dormant picture frame and resonate in the current space you're in. Some casually live in the household and are ready for you to combat once their current activity makes them reveal their visible heart. The game usually expects you to make something happen to them for their heart to be vulnerable, but other times, revealing their heart is as simple as letting them relax in their pastime until they let their guard down. It was charming to attempt to capture this floating ballroom dancing couple and realize that they both constitute a single heart when being captured, which reveals itself when they bow together and feel the passionate high of their dance. It's kind of adorable. Some are willing to toy around with you and show them a slice of their past life before engaging into combat. You have to trigger instruments that play the classic Mario theme to make this piano ghost show herself, and she asks you for a second if you recognize the little ditty she plays. Call it fan service, I just think it's cute that Mario compositions and games canonically exist in this world. I can imagine Toad selling Mario a copy of Mario is Missing for full retail price or some shit. And other portrait ghosts are big bosses, emphasized by frustration and despair over Luigi disturbing them, transporting him to a morbid pocket dimension where you just do a standard pattern-based boss fight. Not anywhere near as inspired as the other sub-portrait ghosts, but at the end of the day, finishing an area and coming back to Professor Egad's lab to take these vicarious beings and immortalize them into paintings is once again another great physical flourish that the game revels in. I want to also commend how grounded in reality this mansion feels. Obviously, it's very skewed in cartoon geometry, but making these rooms resemble real-life regal chambers with an expected level of decor, furniture, ceiling height, and room depth are all great stylistic choices. The plucky Luigi sticks out like a sore thumb, but also funnels well into its intimate, relatable spaces, and it makes the moments when you do encounter something visibly supernatural all the more enchanting. These rooms host a lot of everyday household elements that also facilitate the game's elemental system. Vacuum souls living in water from bathrooms, ice from an ice bucket, or fire from torches, and you'll be able to blowtorch them with your vacuum, and use them to activate appliances and weaken ghosts throughout the mansion. This is a great way to make select rooms in the mansion feel more meaningful than just restoring their light. Now you can deposit in your mind certain rooms per floor that you can rely on finding specific elements for, making you think about the setting as an interconnected symbiotic space, performing logical room functions like making candles lit with fire, or even watering any plants around the house to earn money. One of my favorite secrets in the game is this garden, with this plant that you can water every once in a while until it fully blossoms into a flower that gifts you a rare gem. So we have an unprecedented amount of interactivity and detail here, but none of this set dressing would have been as fulfilling and delightful to explore without the most commendable development that this game has contributed to the Mario series moving forward: Luigi's newfound characterization. He's an endearing avatar to play as, and limiting him to a more grounded, investigatory control style, without any of the wahoo acrobatics of his brother, helps him gel with the foreign world a lot better. And I want to mainly point at how eager and compulsive his gameplay feels. I can always relate to cautious characters who are giddy to check every feature of a room, and who also show some resistance to their journey, whether their actions and overall placement in this crazy situation will garner a positive effect, or make them clumsily fall like an oaf in embarrassment. He's a hero not because he does amazing stunts or always succeeds like a classic speechless video game hero, but because he has persistence on his side, never gives in, and is always on the scene with his emotions on his sleeve. Much like a character like Crash Bandicoot, who may be advertised as a clumsy fool, it's only through the player controlling Luigi that he can properly overcome his clumsiness. Luigi's Mansion is a very fruitful branch of the Mario brand. It's remarkable that a series whose mainline and launch titles are known for abstract, function-over-form level design created one of the most cozy places to indulge in. But it's when getting into the hybrid horror and arcade style of the gameplay that shows both its finest and worst moments. While it is a very puzzle-centric, reaction-heavy, and atmospheric game, I wouldn't call it a very scary game like most people may remember it to be. Not even a grotesque horror game, it more so wears horror like a charming Friday night cartoon costume, while the depth of the game is centered around charming character moments, treasure collecting, and efficiency. But you know, not being particularly scary or chilling in subject matter like how we'd expect horror video games to be, there's nothing wrong with this game not being like that. A reminder that novelty and comedy have been paired with horror from its very conception. A lot of film cult classics are renowned for not just dealing with serious grounded subject matter, but also for more hobbyist simple pleasures like precise pacing, respect for horror tropes, and tongue-in-cheek directing. And Luigi's Mansion is close to that kind of excellence. I think the encounters against the portrait ghosts really inherits that classic cult horror charm, where you're always second-guessing a malevolent spirit's motives while also playing along with their silliness. Madame Clairvoyant is a fun example, a ghost that actually allies with Luigi and his mission to find Mario by tasking you to find souvenirs he left behind throughout the mansion, so she can give mystical diatribes on the specifics of his location and the enemy at large. Once her selfless mission is completed, she willingly accepts Luigi vacuuming her up and turning her back into a painting. It's heartfelt set pieces and odd encounters like that give Luigi's Mansion its comedic ebb and flow and the genuine resolve that horror is capable of. The perfect mood for a cartoony adventure game. And that adventure feel flows well into the arcade qualities of the game. In the moment, and especially during replays, it's satisfying to attempt efficient runs when you've got nearly every room and every portrait ghost figured out. It's fun to decipher the space, knowing what areas have reliable treasure spots, what doors are trapdoors that will make you lose coins, the 2 secret stashes that reward your curiosity, and the preset speedy ghosts and golden mice. The former appearing in certain locations and having an exclusive element to them, requiring the room to be dark and to be captured in one perfect swoop to obtain mad cash before they disappear forever, and the latter having triggers to make them appear and a randomized element to them that also grants you a ton of cash. The third quarter of the game features a blackout scenario where you must find a power generator underground to restore the mansion back to normal. But on your way, you can revisit old rooms and fight your way through increased hordes of ghost fodder to find exclusive speedy spirits and gain more chances to trigger gold mice you may have missed. These are legitimately great arcadey rewards and opportunities that are enhanced by that horror flair. It's when the game really nails its hybridization. But that being said, where Luigi's Mansion falters in its arcade execution specifically is in providing more than its limitations, both for events in the game and control. I think more could be done for the random encounter ghosts. They purely exist to give you health replenishers, block your path, and nothing more, making them very easy to skip through. The blackout section I mentioned earlier is a daunting scenario where you face so many of these guys, but it feels short-sighted to have the only strategy around them being to run away or simply fight them just to get to where you need to go. Seems like there was a missed opportunity to really reward players who stick with combating these hordes through thick and thin, by not at least making ghosts drop small doses of money. The best kind of ranking, arcade-like experiences are the ones that present you more than enough opportunities to get you to a high result, which this game does, but I worry that its abundance of limited, expiring events may deter some newcomers. You either get nearly every exclusive moment down, or lose your chances at being the best at the game. There's no intuitive middle ground of just earning scores casually. Every treasure has to be found in specific spaces. I think the best possible ending would feel more approachable to players if they had plenty of chances to earn money at their leisure, rather than being reliant on checking off every bonus event of the game, pure perfectionist style. And while combat does have a good structure, in execution, it feels like it requires some fine-tuning. I'm glad that this is the game to really cement Nintendo's dollhouse perspective design that makes the game feel like you're looking into a playset with toys, a philosophy that evolves into their Haki no Japanese box garden concept and would influence their games even up to the present. But the angle you're seeing for most of the game does feel too low, and without any helpful drop shadowing under Luigi's feet and most objects and ghosts at times, it sometimes feels like you're gambling with the depth when it comes to pointing your flashlight and vacuum at enemies. The flashlight automatically being on, and for some reason requiring you to hold the B button to turn it off, are also weird pet peeves of mine. I feel it should have been the other way around, not just because it makes sense for me to use pressable feedback to turn on a flashlight when I choose, but because the automatic flashlight results in some unnecessary hiccups where you spot ghosts prematurely and they end up running away because you didn't set up your approach properly. A toggle would have been more friendly to use. Luigi's turning when pointing at things is also very slow, without any inversion or speed options to change. So finding your way to the blind side of an enemy is more of a hassle to get used to than I feel it should be. I'm also conflicted on how I feel about the game's pacing and structure. It's not a very long game, but the prospect of getting a better ending and seizing score-increasing secrets do make replays attractive to try. But how it doles out rooms you can access in a playthrough is pretty patronizing stuff. Clear a room, then obtain its key, then you're treated to a view on your GBH to the exact door you can use this key in. Now granted, there are moments where you can break the intended path and explore another viable room with a portrait ghost in them, but the game mostly feels like you're being guided room by room, and especially area by area, in an intended order. I get that they want to make players sequentially experience set pieces so that they can build off and elevate experiences from one another, which I guess happens when you go from a row of portrait bosses to super portrait boss time, but I think every room and portrait ghost are so distinct in challenge and resolution, almost incomparable for one another, that there's kind of no point in ordering them. I wish I could just encounter the variety at my own pace. And my biggest problem isn't necessarily that backtracking is tedious when going from floor to floor, but it's that for a game about an enigmatic mansion to overcome, the rooms feel a bit fake in their presentation as mysterious chambers, now that you have a device that explicitly tells you when you can go to one. And this wouldn't be a problem if there were only a few keys and a few locked doors, but nearly every room is like this. It makes me think they're not exactly locked because you have to solve the mystery of their intended key, but because the game just hasn't given you permission to go to this room yet, until you finish some other unrelated room. The game is split into 4 consecutive areas, but rather than feeling like separate sections that homogenize, homogenized rooms in a floor, so you could alternate completing them at your leisure, they act more like chapters that literally color code this expansive appearing space, existing only to make certain parts of the mansion more viable than others. I do like that you're sprawling this mansion space by the third area. I grew to understand my way around the map very quickly. Again, being a labyrinth is not an issue, but being a connect-the-dots tour-guided labyrinth does cheapen the appeal of exploring. Speaking of cheap things, boo hunting. A major side quest of the game, where Luigi accidentally unleashes 50 boos that he can only capture in rooms he's already completed. The idea of an ongoing secondary group of mini-bosses alongside the portrait ghosts is a fun one, but what boo hunting amounts to in every encounter is a lamer, lesser form of regular ghost combat. Go into a room and wait for the radar to blink red before you touch an object. More than likely, it will be a boo faking you out with a dumb object, which means that the second time will be the charm. The boo pops out and you just point at it manually with your vacuum until its health depletes. You don't even tug of war these guys. Repeat for like 35 times, with the only major difference being how much health a boo can have. It's especially a nuisance in the early parts of the game where you can't fully access all the rooms, as delaying a boo's capture will make them escape through a wall, often to a room you can't go to yet. And by the endgame, boos can have so much health that you'll be going back and forth way more times than necessary. No matter how you put it, boo hunting is a chore with boring, arbitrary difficulty. It gives you a sweet reward if you dedicate to the task, but it feels like obvious padded content. Hell, even one of the main bosses you fight are just 15 of these boos combined. Even they knew they overdid it. Hey, maybe this is where Suda51 got that idea to do this bullshit in No More Heroes 2. I'm piling a lot of complaints here, but it's only because I think a game like this that blends the formal, whimsical magic of adventure horror with a tight arcade experience will inevitably have that kind of dichotomy. This is a project with wondrous and alluring style. There's no second guessing why the image of this game lingers so much in people's minds, even if you haven't properly played it yet. But weighing everything together, I think you can excuse a lot of the launch title jank of this project because of how pleasurable the formal experience ends up being. Even when things don't feel fine-tuned or fair in Luigi's Mansion, it's so novel to witness and play that you're kinda glad they gave a lot of this stuff a shot. To think that a district of the plastic-perfect Mario video game world has this off-brand underground corner that thrives in modern strategies and sensibilities like realistic lighting, uncanny domestic architecture, historical pseudo-human figures with a legitimate past, and actual fear and catharsis expressed by classic Nintendo characters in the face of adversity. The Mario series didn't just look into new technologies and genres from this entry. It looked outside of its own self, making a clone Player 2 avatar a living, breathing character, making him interact with other misfits, a conflict where classic boos get revenge after years of platforming tyranny, and where Bowser is treated as this forsaken dead legend, where the prospect of him being resurrected and masqueraded by another party is actually pretty frightening. Thanks to Luigi's Detour, Mario's beloved squeaky clean image expanded into new environmental and psychological territory, and a detour like this could only enrich the scope and sensations of these classic characters from here on. I'll have to see if the sequels to Luigi's Mansion and even that one remake can reach that horror arcade excellence I'm yearning for, because they were definitely onto something here. A rinky-dink Luigi adventure like this, where the bro proves he can hold his own game, is definitely a product of the time that deserved another shot at being excellent.